Welcome into the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining me today. We have a jam-packed show for you as always. Of course, I'll give you the phone number to begin with, 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the program. Got several things we're going to get into today, including Deion Sanders. Yeah, Coach Prime basically giving it to the NCAA on NIL. So, yeah, that's interesting. We'll also get into the latest on Arch Manning, where, that guy has to live up to his name, so that's going to be tough anyway. We'll talk to you a little bit about that. The phone number, if you want to join the program, as always, is 803-978-1832. And you know what? We'll go ahead and go out to the phones now. Here we go. Welcome into the program. Good afternoon.
Hey, it's Big Barney Ross. Before you start with the good times and the bad times, I know all them NIL rule changes are really confusing. Can you go over all that again? I'll get off here and listen. Big Barney Ross, I'm out.
I will not go over all of the NIL stuff again. I can say that it's toothless with the NCAA, and we can definitely get into that in a moment. There are comments that are already pouring in. Papa B says the ACC is going to have 3 permanent divisions and 5 rotating divisions. So, yeah, there's that too. We can get into that later on, but I thought we would do this is from Brad Crawford at 247 Sports. I thought we'd go over this really quick today. And I love these because this is sort of an evaluation that a lot of guys will throw out there and see what the kickback will be from different fan bases about their program for the upcoming season. Now, we try to be unbiased here on the rundown, or I try to be. But some folks will really, really get upset with some of these things. But the best and worst case scenarios for SEC teams for 2022. So I thought we'd roll through some of these, and you can tell me whether or not he's on point or not. Jay with another dumb comment. Jay leads like I said we were going to do the arrest record and have that as which school was going to lead the country in arrests. Like, Jay leads as far as stupid comments goes. So, saying that Rob's going to hate on Arch Manning if he goes to UGA. No, I'm not. Kirby's Visor with another dumb comment. Rob will say if Arch Manning comes to UGA, he's a bum and was never that good to begin with. No. I don't know why you guys think that. Ridiculous. Anyway. Best and worst case scenarios, the Vanderbilt Commodores, they have them at 5 wins. And they talk about, could they potentially win 2 games in conference play and snap the longest league losing streak in America? I don't know. We shall see. The worst case is 1-11 and 0-8. So I ask you today, which do you think is more likely to happen? The best case there at 5-7 or the worst case 1-11? I think with Vanderbilt, we could possibly go into the mix and say that the 1-11 seems a little more likely than the 5-7. Up next is the Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Pirate down there it seems like, what is it, like the 3rd or 4th year he's with the program, the offense really starts clicking. They've got the best case scenario at 8-4. 8-4. 4-4 in conference play. And worst case scenario is 4-8, 1-7 in conference play. And they say they face the toughest schedule in America, and they could be in for a disappointing season. 4-8 sounds a little bit off, in my opinion. I think they're going to be better than 4-8. But 8-4 seems almost about right for Mississippi State. I don't know. We shall see. The Missouri Tigers, 7-5 is their best case scenario. Of course, they go to Kansas State in week 2. Then Yeah, that's the toughest game in their non-conference schedule is on the road at Kansas State. But 7-5, 3-5 in conference play. Their worst case scenario is 4-8. 4-8 and 1-7. I believe more in Eli Drinkowitz than that. And I think that 7 wins is more likely than 4 wins. Next up on the list is Ole Miss. Their best case scenario is 10-2 with a 6-2 conference record. So the back end of their schedule includes Texas A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, and Mississippi State over the Final Four contest. Yeah, that's tough. But 6-6 and 2-6 is their worst case scenario. There's that. Kirby's visor apparently became conscious and actually has a good comment. Mizzou will finish with a better record than Florida. That's not that far-fetched. Give you a star for that. Jay says Ole Miss finishes second in the West at worst. So he's buying into Lane Kiffin. All right, let's go to the Kentucky Wildcats. Their best case scenario, according to Brad Crawford from 247 Sports, is 11-1. And they think that they have a real chance to get off to a 7-0 start heading into the midseason open week if they can take out Florida and Ole Miss away from Lexington in weeks 2 and 5. I think that is sweet thinking, in my opinion. I mean, I think they can beat Florida, but going on the road and beating Ole Miss away from Lexington, I don't know. I don't know on that one. Worst case scenario is 7-5. They seem like they're a 7-5 team to me. 7-5, 8-4. I don't think that. I think that people seem to misunderstand the whole thing with. There's a reason they were trying to get in on the wide receiver derby there with the young man from Pittsburgh. They don't have any wide receivers for Will Levis to throw the ball to. I don't care how good you think Will Levis is. He has to have somebody to catch the ball. All right, let's go out to the phones. 803-978-1832. Best and worst case scenarios for SEC teams today. And let's go to the phones. Well, I think I hung up on them by accident. My fault. All right, 803-978-1832. We'll move on to the Auburn Tigers. The Auburn Tigers, they project them at their best case scenario at 8-4. You know, I think that 8-4 is that'd be everything has to go right. Worst case scenario is 4-8. I think they go 4-8 if Tank Bigsby is hurt. I think if they do, if they give the ball to Bigsby and try to control teams with that, I think there's a chance they could win 6 games. I think 8 is a little bit far-fetched. Texas A&M, according to this article, their best case scenario is 11-1. It says, yes, the roster is talented enough to win 11 games. However, that would mean at worst going 5-1 against Miami, Arkansas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Florida, and LSU. Worst case scenario is 8-4, 5-3 in conference play. Don't lose to Miami, Jimbo Fisher. I tell you what, if they win that, if Mario Cristobal is looking for a win in his first season that he can hang his hat on, yeah, that's the one right there. If he can go into Texas A&M and win there, ooh-wee, man, they're gonna start buying that stuff up down in Miami quick. 8-4, 5-3 in conference play. That's the worst case scenario for the Aggies. Jason wants to know if there's any news on Rodriguez. Yeah, I haven't heard anything else about, of course, talking about Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky. I don't know anything else about him, to be honest. We'll have to see. A couple of other comments. Jay says Ole Miss and LSU will finish with the same record, tied for 4th or 5th in the West. Okay. Kirby's visor says just had a Texas fan come into the office and he's nervous about coming to the SEC, but said if they can beat the Aggies annually, he doesn't care if they lose the rest of the games. I'm not buying that because I think if they wanted to play Texas A&M every season, they could have. They could have set that up as a non-conference game and played. I think Texas is just scared. It's just my opinion. I really believe that. They want to be like the absolute, think that they're the shining bright star of Texas, and they're not. TCU's handled them lately. Baylor beats them. They lost to freaking Kansas. They should really just put their hat in their hand and shut the hell up for a little bit. They really should. All right, 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. The Florida Gators, their best case scenario, 9-3 in the first year for Billy Napier. And it says, if the Gators upend nationally ranked Utah in the Swamp to open the season, go ahead and cash the over for odds makers preseason win total projection in Gainesville. They're not beating Utah in the first game of the season. I know where Brad's going with this, trying to give some hope there to the folks down in Florida because they've got a new coach and they're thinking, you know what, maybe if we can beat this team from the Pac-12, that is the Pac-12 favorite, that the future might be bright down here in Gainesville and we can relive some of the Tim Tebow era without the guys that were actually murdering people on the field. Maybe that's what he's trying to come across with there. But the reality is that Florida needs to recruit. Dan Mullen kind of let it slip away a little bit. In addition to that, a lot of guys left the program. Now remember, this is the Florida team that lost the game to Central Florida, and they lost the fight afterwards. Normally you win one or the other. When they lose both, it says a little bit about you. He's got to get him some guys down there first before all of that happens. Worst case scenario is 5-7. And it says the program's not going to capsize over a 1-3 start. But it's possible the month of September could be ugly at Florida. After Utah, they host Kentucky and go to Tennessee to close out the month. Yeah, you're going to end up in September theoretically playing 3 teams that are ranked in the top 25 right there at the beginning of the month. Not to mention you got to play Georgia later on in the season. But the September for Florida, they could remember the Florida State fan where Clemson was beating them like 66 to something and he's in the stands reading a book. That's kind of what you're going to have in the Swamp if they start the season that bad and they end up losing to Kentucky, Tennessee, and Utah. You're going to lose a good portion of that fan base. All right, 803-978-1832. The Arkansas Razorbacks projection for the best case is at 10-2. They did win 9 games last season in Sam Pittman's second campaign. Now, hey, you got to win 10 games. We shall see. They've got Cincinnati and BYU on the non-conference schedule. I think that is a tough thing there with both of those teams on your schedule, in addition to playing an SEC West schedule. So, tough sledding there for the Razorbacks. Worst case scenario is 5-7. Now, if they drop BYU and Cincinnati, you got 4 games in from the SEC West that are going to be hard anyway. Yeah, I mean 5-7 is if they slip the least little bit, it's going to come down to those non-conference games. Can they beat BYU and Cincinnati? Is whether or not we're going to figure out if they're going to be a bowl team. Peg and Megan says the curse of Tebow is real. Florida's a 6-win team this year. Might be right. If we go just by what their coach said about they had issues with enough bodies in practice. Now, granted, they're going to get some of these guys with the new guys coming in the for summer. I understand that. But the reality, it comes back to this. You got to have enough guys, and right now they don't. The Tennessee Volunteers, they project them to go 10-2 as their best case scenario. For that to happen, Tennessee's losses would likely come against Alabama and Georgia, and they would have wins over Florida, LSU, Kentucky, and Pitt. Worst case is 5-7 in Josh Heupel's second season. a loss to Pitt on the road in week 2 would be damaging as they start. It would be damaging as with starting the SEC slate with a loss in Gainesville to the Gators. I think this is the year they beat them. I really do. I think they go down to Florida and they win that game. And I think a lot of it's got to do with the fact that they're going to play them early. And I think it's more, the more and more you look at Tennessee and the gimmick offense that they still need some more tape on, I think that not enough people have figured that out yet. And with that, I think it's more likely they go 10-2 than 5-7. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, Jason agrees with me that Tennessee is due for a win against Florida. Motivated Dedicated says Gainesville is a giant meth lab. Peg and Megan says that game is in Knoxville, right? According to this, yeah, it says they're playing Gainesville. That's what it says. I'll check and make sure. All right, 803-978-1832. We will get back to it in just a bit. This is the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I'm checking on that game there, Peg and Megan, whatever we're calling you now. Let's see here. It says it's in Neyland Stadium. You're right. My fault. I'm reading what from the report. So you're right. It is at Neyland Stadium. Right after that big matchup with Akron. David Letterman's alma mater, Ball State, then Pitt on the road, Akron, and then Florida. Tennessee should go 4-0. They can't beat Pitt, then they got issues. That's a good point, Big Barney Ross. Do you Georgia fans still care as much about that game with Florida, even though they're, y'all are probably going to be like 14-point favorites against them? I mean, it really is like beating up a special ed kid. It really is. That game shouldn't mean that much to you. Oh, Peg and Megan says, yeah. I mean, do you really, I'm just being honest, do you really get up for it that much? Because you know you're going to win. It's like, okay. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. I made a mistake in the last segment. Peg and Megan called me out for it. Tennessee will play at home against Florida. It's not on the road in Gainesville. So, yeah, I messed up there. They will have Tennessee at home. Their schedule to start the season is Ball State on the road at Pitt, home game against Akron, and then a home game against Florida. Tennessee's going to go 10-2. They need to go 4-0 there. And that includes winning on the road at Pitt, going up to the catch-up field. Let's go out to the phones, 803-978-1832. Welcome into the program. Good afternoon.
Hey, Rob, it's Scott from Hartsville.
Hi, Scott.
Talking about teams, what their record might be. I mean, it's a little bit harder when you have expectation on you.
What do you mean by that?
Like Tennessee had a good year last year, so they're expected to do more this year. And with that expectation on them, are they?
I mean, I guess I can see that, but I don't think that. Look, I think the level-headed Tennessee fan will tell you that an 8-win season is very important to them. Getting to that this year is kind of the next step. Not losing a bowl game to Purdue or a team like Purdue is the next big step. But I also think that the game that chapped their butts a lot last season was losing to Pitt at home.
Yeah.
They'll tell you 15 times over, oh, we should have beaten Pitt. Well, no, you shouldn't have. You got your butt handed to you in your own stadium. But I think going there this year, I think that's the most pivotal game on the schedule for Tennessee. I think that keeps, if they lose that game, 8-4 is a stretch. So
how about for South Carolina? Do you think that 3-game stretch that they have with Missouri, Tennessee, and Florida, those are all 3 must wins?
Here's the thing with that. I think South Carolina fans think that they're a better program than Tennessee is right now.
They do.
And I think that with the amount of transfers that South Carolina has brought in, it's almost like, to use an old school wrestling thing here, they're kind of hot-shotting it a little bit, hoping that they'll get to that 9 or 10 win plateau this year with a lot of the guys that they brought in that may only be there for 1 year, like a Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
So with that, that 3-game stretch is important, but you also have to look at it from this perspective. You want to be ahead of Mizzou and Vanderbilt, especially in the recruiting world here, okay? And if you can get a 1-up on Florida too, that's a big deal. So, winning those 3 games are really, really important, I think. For
really key to them.
Yep.
And, with all the transfers that they bring in, they have lost a lot of players the last 2 years under Shane Beamer.
Well, but respectfully, though, a lot of those guys weren't exactly, in my opinion, Power 5 talent. You got to remember, Will Muschamp is a dummy, and he can coach on the defensive side of the ball. We'll give him that. But he was bringing in offensive linemen and guys that were slated to play at a lower level of football. And when you raise that level through recruiting, of course you're going to lose some guys.
Yeah, but if you look at the wide receivers that he brought in some really good wide receivers there at South Carolina.
Okay, under what?
Under Muschamp. They had Dabo. They had Edwards, and they had Shi Smith on the field at one time there together.
Okay, but they didn't really have. I mean, that's 3 over the course of what, a 5-year period?
Yeah, but I mean that season, you would have thought that those 3 guys are in the NFL now.
Okay. He kind of forgot to recruit offensive linemen, though. That may have had a little bit to do with the fact that the quarterback couldn't get those guys the ball.
But, I don't see Beamer really recruiting. I mean, he brought in a bunch of transfers last year that were supposed to change the program, and they didn't. They left. They're already gone now.
Well, I think last year he was trying to fill holes, and this year he's really – I mean, look, Stogner and Rattler, just go off those 2 guys. The young man from Wake Forest that was their leading rusher last year. I mean, he's bringing in some talent.
The way Wake Forest runs the ball is completely different than any other team in the country. The way that they slow play the run game. So you don't know what he's going to do now.
Okay. I mean, I can just tell you that he put up numbers against Power 5 teams. That's kind of important.
Dave Clawson's got a different way. I mean, they almost stop the running back at the line of scrimmage, and he waits for a little bit before he
picks his holes. Yeah.
He picks his hole. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. But, and talking about Arch Manning, I think Clemson dodged a bullet by not getting him.
Why would you say that?
because I think it would take away from the other players, because every game they're going to show his dad, his granddad, his two uncles, and they're going to talk about them through the whole game. And I think that will just wear on a team. And I don't think he's going to Georgia. I think he's going to Texas.
I don't know where he's going to end up, but
Georgia's got some really good quarterbacks there, some young ones.
Yeah, but Georgia also, I mean, they've I don't know how confident they feel with some of those quarterbacks that are on the bench with Stetson Bennett starting. I mean, you can have the 5-star name, right, the 5-star rating next to your name. That really doesn't mean anything at Georgia. They won a national championship with a guy that's basically a SoCon quarterback.
Yeah.
So.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, appreciate it as always. Thanks for calling the program. Yeah, he mentioned South Carolina. We'll get to them in a moment. But, yeah, Tennessee, for them to go 10-2, that game with Pitt is huge. It really, really is. 803-978-1832. Peg and Megan made a comment up there about, let's read Peg and Megan's comment because it's up there on the stupid tree. I mean, he fell out of the stupid tree and hit every branch on the way down, then got up and grabbed the branch and then beat himself with it. This is how stupid this comment is. Will Muschamp has 3 championship rings. Dabo has 2. How many does he have as a head coach, which is what we were talking about? Not his time as an assistant. That's like saying Robert Horry is the greatest NBA player of all time because he rode the backs of, I don't know, David Robinson and those guys with the Spurs and the Rockets and everything else. That is just next level stupid. Under that logic, Robert Horry's the best NBA player ever. Ridiculous. As far as building a program, Will Muschamp had 2 opportunities to do that, and he failed miserably. He is a defensive coordinator. That's what he's good at. Hopefully, he'll be better than Dan Lanning this year, and for the Georgia fans, we shall see. And, of course, Peg and Megan says the limb was right there. He couldn't resist. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, 803-978-1832. I pick at Peg and Megan, but I appreciate him watching the show, listening to the show, etc. 803-978-1832. JetMech makes a comment that I'm not sure I can say on the radio here, but you can find it on the in the chat room. Go to the Fox Sports Radio Facebook page and follow there. All right, 803-978-1832. Quick break. When we come back, we'll give you the best case for the rest of the SEC. This is the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah, he's a douche. Yeah, Jay, I don't like the whole thing with going to Florida for a charity visit. What the hell is Arch Manning going there for? I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense. Good point there, Papa B. Fail miserably at what? Steve Spurrier won national titles with Florida. What are you talking about, Billy? Tennessee fans don't get to talk about Steve Spurrier. What are you talking about, Peg and Megan? If you're talking about the season, he went like 11-1 with Ron Zook's players. Okay. That's a good point there, Papa B. The time at South Carolina was charity for Steve Spurrier with Tennessee because he beat the snot out of you when he was at Florida. You don't get to talk about Spurrier. You don't get to do that. I mean, that's like if your uncle like takes liberties with you, and the only thing you can remember is the smell of whiskey breath, and the smell of whiskey like makes your stomach gurgle. That's what Spurrier did to Tennessee. You don't get to talk about Spurrier like that. Ridiculous. By the way, tonight on the Rob and Kale show, we debut the Tennessee song tonight, what we're going to play until you win a national title. Make sure you guys tune in for that. Well, welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. I'm Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us here today during best and worst case scenarios for the program today for SEC teams today. The LSU Tigers, their best case scenario is 9-3. It says they only leave Louisiana twice before November. Those games come against Florida and Auburn, two programs who likely won't be ranked at the time. Win those split matchups with Tennessee and Ole Miss at home. Then 2 wins during the final month against Alabama, Arkansas, UAB, and Texas A&M gets to the best case number. Okay. Worst case is 5-7, 2-6 in conference play. Since we're counting the opener against Florida State as a loss in this 5-win projection, which would be catastrophic for the Tigers. The SEC opener 2 weeks later against Mississippi State and Baton Rouge would warrant the must-win tag early for Brian Kelly before they get angry down there in Cajun land. That's interesting. The Georgia Bulldogs, best case scenario is 12-0, 8-0 in conference play. Toughest game on their schedule is Oregon at the beginning of the season. The rest of it, Georgia's probably 14 points better than everybody else. Just saying. 8-0 in conference play. Also, worst case scenario, 10-2, 7-1 in conference play. And this is not what I wrote. This is what Brad Crawford wrote. So please send your hate tweets there, because I know you Georgia fans don't want to hear this because you play. And this, I'm not the only one who thinks this, by the way. You play a piss poor SEC East schedule. And I stand behind that. And that's what he says too. They're not going to lose 2 SEC games during the regular season. The schedule is too soft for that. Sorry, that's what Brad Crawford said. I didn't say it. He said it. Send your hate tweets there. On the worst case scenario side, we'll call a 1-1 split with Tennessee and Kentucky as the only potential loss, coming after a stunning defeat at the hands of Oregon in the opener as the most obvious path to a 10-2 faceplant for the overwhelming preseason favorite to win the East. I agree with everything he said there. They should be favored by 14 points against everyone. Their toughest game is Oregon, the first game of the season. Alabama, their best case scenario, obviously 12-0. 8-0 in conference play. I kind of hard to argue there. Worst case scenario, 10-2 and 7-1. Like Georgia, Alabama has an intriguing early season showdown with a nationally ranked non-conference foe. The Crimson Tide go to Texas for a September 10 tilt against the Longhorns. The difference, though, is that Texas is not very good. I don't think they're going to be world beaters at all. They may be ranked in the top 25 at the time, but they may not end up ranked at the end of the season. Yeah, they're going on the road to play, and playing in front of, 60,000 people wearing cowboy hats might be hard. I think Oregon's a tougher out for Georgia, or for if they were playing Alabama, than Texas is going to be. So, in addition to that, they say road games against Tennessee, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and LSU are the others we're keeping an eye on that could be worrisome for Alabama. Now, of course, that is in the worst case scenario. It comes down to that, though. I mean, do you think when you look at the non-conference schedule, the 2 tough games there, which one's tougher, Oregon or going on the road to Texas? I'm going to say Oregon. Really, really am. And there's other things that are in the mix too with that make that game a little bit tougher. Dan Lanning knows, I mean, he worked under Kirby Smart, so he knows the guys that are out on the field, probably helped recruit a good bit of them. He knows the defensive signals. He knows all of that. Now, obviously, they're probably going to change some of it, but he knows all of that stuff. Now, can he get Bo Nix in there to work a miracle, which is what it would be? We'll see on that. And finally, the South Carolina Gamecocks, best case scenario, 9-3, 5-3 overall in conference. The Gamecocks are facing 5 games against nationally ranked SEC opponents this season. South Carolina, in this optimistic projection, South Carolina would snap their long losing skid against Texas A&M. And worst case scenarios, 4-8. There's a reason odds makers have South Carolina wins total at 6 this fall. And it says the Gamecocks, of course, play Arkansas and Georgia in back-to-back weeks to open the SEC slate, and then face the Orange Crush of Florida, Tennessee, and Clemson over a 3-week stretch in November. So there's that. All right, so best case for South Carolina, 9-3. Worst case is 4-8. I'd be stunned if they won 4 games. Really would. (803-978-1832), 803-978-1832. Kirby's advisor says Bama still has a weak O-line. They will drop a game or 2, and that's fair. If you don't have the game in the trenches, that can really get you. And he also says it doesn't matter if you know the personnel and schemes. How are you going to stop them without the same talent level? You're exactly right. I'm just saying, knowing the schemes and knowing the guys that are out there, that kind of gives you an advantage. I'm not saying Oregon's going to win. Let's make sure we put that out there. I don't think that's going to happen. I just think that's the toughest game on the Georgia schedule this year. Is the Oregon game. Another comment. Jason says South Carolina will be very happy with a 9-3 season. Yeah, they'll rename Bluff Road Shane Beamer Boulevard if that happens. They go 9-3. Yeah, that's kind of the way to go. Billy says South Carolina 7-5, 8-4 at best. Their O-line is suspect, and Rattler can't get hurt. Yeah, that's something else too. Spencer Rattler needs to be in bubble wrap right now. That's kind of the way to look at it. I mean, because an injury to him, and I know that Doty's healthy now or should be healthy by the time the season starts, but there's a significant drop-off from Shane Rattler, from Spencer Rattler to Luke Doty. A huge, huge drop there. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. My buddy Carolina Jackpot, according to Peg and Megan, will drink the upstate dry if South Carolina wins 9 games. Of all the fans of South Carolina, that gentleman deserves a good season. I think a lot of Gamecock fans are right there in the mix with that. After going through the years of Muschamp and the silliness that was, having a good season is due for the Gamecock fans. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832. Jetmex says he's hearing that Florida brought in Gallagher to help prepare for that Vols gimmick offense. I'm telling you, eventually, someone is going to figure out that offense. And, maybe the way to do it is, look, we're going to hit the quarterback every single time. We're going to test Hendon Hooker a little bit here. Let him get popped. I'm not saying, hey, dirty plays, but let him have those footsteps in his head. That way he's thinking by the middle of the third quarter, they're going to get me. They're going to get me. Just saying. Maybe that's kind of the way to go. But on the other hand, Tennessee's defense may give up a point a minute. You can probably go that route. All right, 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That's the number to call if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. A team with a power running game can do that too. Just keep you off the field. That's kind of the way to do it. The problem is that the Vol secondary is so suspect that if a running back gets into the secondary, he's gone. I do think if I were Tennessee, I'd run a 4-2-5 defense. Just put five, basically the best athletes you've got out there in the secondary, and just hope that you don't get gouged to death. Let them eat you up between the 20s. But Kirby Smart doesn't run any 4-2-5, does he? Good point. Yep. If you've got the running back and the offensive line to do that, yes, sir. I agree with you, sir. You don't know if any of those guys are going to pan out. You don't know that for sure, Billy. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. We did best and worst case scenarios for the SEC. Brandon says, Rob, do you think the Gamecock wide receivers will be more productive this year? Last year, our receivers were horrible outside of Josh Vann. I think Coach Stepp is a heck of a wide receivers coach. He turned a lot of lemons into lemonade at Arkansas and then came to South Carolina and built some stuff there. I think it's just going to take some time. I'm curious to see how they put Stogner and Jaheim Bell into as far as them making some catches. What's Kerryon Joyner going to do? I mean, this is his swan song, basically, right? Is he finally going to pick up everything and be that dynamic playmaker that he was at Fort Dorchester? They get the ball in his hands and he can make some moves. Might be interesting. And then you got Van there too. But having a quarterback that can put the ball where you want it, that might be beneficial to some of these receivers. He may turn some of these guys from middle of the pack talent to, near the top talent, just being as good of a quarterback as he can be. So, yeah, we'll see how that works out. Billy wants to know if I think Brew McCoy, the wide receiver from Southern Cal, will work out as far as, he transferred into Tennessee. Look, here's the thing. I was just talking about Spencer Rattler. I don't know how good he's going to be. He may go out there in the first game against Arkansas or the first, they open up with Georgia State. Let's say they roll through that game. Doesn't have a good game against Arkansas, comes out against Georgia, throws a couple of picks, and he looks like he's just lost. You don't know until those guys get there and they get into the system and how they react to the coaches. I mean, everything is different. Listen, it's hard for a transfer to come in with new coaches and everything else and be expected to shine. I mean, it really is. So that's why it's hard to sit here and say, all right, these guys are just going to be great. You don't know that for sure. You don't know. They're coaches and they put them into a position where they're not going to be good. Pagan Megan says Rob is going to celebrate every single catch Jermaine Burton makes this year for Alabama. He'll be making catches there, not making deflections from the quarterback. He's not going to get any defensive back tape at Alabama. There you go with that. Billy says Beamer won't bench him either. No, he won't. Why would he? Do you think that the guy behind him is going to be any better? I don't know. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Deion Sanders is at it again. A week removed from saying that players should focus on the NFL and not NIL. The Jackson State head football coach said in a Twitter video that he believes NIL is causing behavior issues among players. Yeah. At NCAA, you have a problem. I'm trying to help before it blows up in your face. Money makes you more of who you really are. Now think about that for a minute. God bless you all. That's just hilarious to hear Deion Sanders saying that. He says, when you start paying athletes like they're professionals, you get athletes acting like they're professionals. And you don't have staffs large enough and equipped enough to handle a young man with money. Let me go deeper. Handle a young man that's making more money than some of the coaches on the staff. Yeah, there's that too. Can you imagine being hey, I'm your head coach, but you make more money than I do for peddling chicken and biscuits? That's out there. Sanders offered a solution to the NCAA, saying the college team should be allowed to hire qualified men that can handle these young men that's getting this money. Well, define qualified men. What are we talking about here there, Coach Prime? Who is it that's qualified that can tell an 18-year-old that got $600,000 from insert NIL collective here how to act with that $600,000? I mean, do they grow these guys on trees? I don't understand. I don't think there's anyone that can do that. And I agree with Kirby's visor. Deion is such a hypocrite. Can you imagine Deion Sanders in today's game? I mean, he was a heck of a talent at Florida State. And I'm not saying that he didn't get money down there. I'm pretty sure that he did. We don't live under this whole umbrella here on the Rundown that, there's not $500 handshakes here or there. But in an NIL world, can you imagine what Deion Sanders would make? And how do you think he would act? He'd lose his mind. Especially if he was being the two-sport athlete. He'd have been crazy. I mean, people would have been lined up. That line got me. Let me go deeper. Handle a young man that's making more money than some of the coaches on the staff. Get out of here, Deion. What a mess. And, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We've talked about that before. I don't know how to fix NIL. People talk about a cap. You can only get so much money. I like the idea of you can only have so much of it while you're in school too. Why not, make these young men look, if you're going to get NIL money, you got to take some classes on finances. Yeah, we're going to put some of this in a trust. Once you leave the school and you're gone for a calendar year, you can have it. You get, I don't know, pick a round number, whatever. You get $25,000 a year in addition to your scholarship and everything else. The rest of it's going into the bank. And you got to take financial responsibility classes. That way, when you do get to the NFL, if you get to the NFL, you will have the capability to manage your money. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. If the NCAA wants to do something where they actually can, quote unquote, care about the athletes, make them do that. If you're going to take this NIL money, you got to take financial responsibility classes and you'll only get a percentage of it. And it's your money. We're just saying that you can only have so much of it out of a trust. That would make the most sense. Billy says you get the money when you leave, graduate, or go to the NFL. Better yet, do away with NIL and the transfer portal. Well, we can't do that. Can't do that. I do like the idea of putting it in a trust and giving them an opportunity to, you can make your NIL money, but you're only getting so much. I mean, what do you really need that much for? Seriously. I know some people are like, yeah, they can send some of it back home. And I know that not all cases are the same. I understand that, but make it a percentage. I said 25K, let's say 30%. You can have 30% of your NIL money. If you're making $300,000, you get 30% of that. What am I missing here? All right. Tomorrow on the program, we will, I've got some other stuff we're going to look at. Tomorrow is Thursday. Looking forward to that. Jason says, I think every player who knows they have a chance to go to the NFL majors in money management now. You're probably right. But, I mean, there was it the ESPN 30 for 30 on broke, where guys are literally broke. They don't have any money. And money management is a big deal. Put some of it away. What is it Jim Ross says, the WWE announcer, AEW announcer now? Pay your taxes. Uncle Sam's got to get his. Good comment from Kirby's Visor. Put a cap on the NIL and portal. Can only be 2 weeks a year. Yeah, I can see that too, where, look, you can have it's like a period of time that you can do that stuff. I think that'll work with the transfer portal, by the way. And I think it should be a one-time transfer. After that, you can't transfer anymore. Get the opportunity to go once, and that's it. All right. Tomorrow on the program, we'll have some more interesting, whatever else comes our way. Hypocrisy you, though, with Deion Sanders. All right. Thanks for checking out the show. Podcast will be up at 5 o'clock. Lawton Swan is next. My name is Rob Sanders. I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. We'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, one time. If you can't figure it out after once, then what's your problem? You're stuck. One time, that's it. That cuts down on all of it. You can only transfer once. Yeah, well, it's not like you can. I'm surprised that you were able to type reevaluate. All right, guys. We'll see you tonight. Rob and Kale Show debut of the Tennessee song we're going to play until they win a national title. See you tonight.